Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro, friends. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Elixir Specialty Coffee. Looks like whiskey, feels like tea, made from coffee, and unlike anything you've ever tasted before, head to elixirspecialtycoffee.com and enter code IMAPITFORWARD to get 10% off your first purchase today. Today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro is a very exciting subject for me because it's something I think about a lot. It's the breakdown or exploration, I guess, of the difference between what would be considered an intuitive coffee professional versus an analytical coffee professional. So what's the difference? A intuitive coffee professional is someone who feels their way through things. So an example of an intuitive coffee professional is someone who wouldn't use Cropster, for example. So a roaster. They don't use Cropster. They feel their way. They don't record any numbers. They just intuit their way through a roast. They use their senses. So they use sound. They listen out for cracks. They listen out for things they've become familiar with. They look for color. They use their senses. These are all sensory things that give them an understanding of where things are progressing. But they're not using any analytical data at all. The equivalent in a barista would be a barista that doesn't weigh their shots or use a refractometer when they're measuring extraction percentages. They don't measure the temperature of the water in their machines or the consistency of those kinds of things. They don't weigh things. They don't keep time of brewing or anything. They measurements are not kept. So an analytical coffee professional uses numbers and an intuitive coffee professional does not use numbers. Now, is one more important than the other? That's a really interesting question. When I was coming up in the coffee industry 18 years ago, 15 plus years ago, we had scales, we had timers, we had thermometers, and yet, for some strange reason, we didn't weigh things. We didn't time things. We didn't time things as much as we absolutely do now. It was a different time. We were intuitive coffee professionals. When we were extracting things, we would smell, we would listen, we would see what was going on with an espresso shot so that we could know when to cut things off. A lot of it was free pour so that we could keep track of things. Back then, that was the skill of the barista. And while I was trained that way, I much prefer, I guess for lack of a better term, the new way of doing things. And the reason is because no matter whether you're an intuitive barista or you're an analytical barista or roaster, taste is always going to be the ultimate guide of where you should be heading. It trumps everything. But knowing how to get back to that taste and how you achieved that taste and how you got there and how to get back there, all of that is based in the numbers and the analytics. And so while there are those roasters baristas that can make great coffee and roast great coffee without measuring anything, the difference between them and an analytical coffee professional is that the analytical coffee professional will have a better shot at absolutely nailing it with consistency. And that's the key thing here. When you're measuring things and your equipment tends to stray a little bit, there's humidity in the air, things expand and extract, and temperature changes, and the storage method of anything that you're doing, whether the green bean was stored inconsistently, then the last batch that you roasted, if the ambient temperature is different, when the results are different and you've been measuring everything, you know how to bring things back to equilibrium so that you can get to the sweet spot that you've decided. Now, here's the thing. Being purely analytical and not focused on taste is not going to make you any better a coffee professional than someone who is just intuitive. The reason is because being able to taste is and knowing what you're tasting and being very deliberate about knowing what flavor profiles you're going for are going to they're going to differentiate you between everybody else around you. If you're going for a particular flavor profile and you're measuring anything, or you're measuring everything. I'm sorry, I have had so much caffeine today that I'm losing words. I did a consult this morning and we drank far too much coffee. So I apologize that I'm tripping over some of my words, but I haven't been this fucked up on caffeine in a very long time. Fun times. Anyway, back to what I was saying. If you are looking, if you know what particular flavor profile you're going for, and it may be very specific. It may be something that a niche group of people like and only that niche group of people like. But you know what you're going for. If you're measuring things, you will know how to get back there. And it is ultimately important for you as a coffee professional to be able to bring yourself back to what you're aiming for when it wanders. Because everything is dynamic in what we do. The coffee, the equipment, the humans, the milk, the water, everything. And you should be measuring as much as you can, as well as being intuitive. The more you do something, the more repeated your actions, the more frequently you expose yourself to your equipment and to your processes, and you learn muscle memory. All of that side of things develops your intuition. Measuring that stuff helps you get an analytical relationship between the intuitive side of you and the numbers. And all of it needs to be brought back to taste. Taste, as I said, taste is the guiding light for all of it. And that, for me, when I am training baristas, I want them to start to develop an understanding of what they like and what they don't like. My job as a barista, when I was a barista, is to learn how my customers enjoy their coffee and be able to replicate that for them consistently every day they chose my coffee machine over anybody else's coffee machine. That's the skill of a barista, understanding what something tastes like and being able to execute it with consistency. The same thing for a roaster. But just being analytical or just being intuitive without the relationship between them, in my personal opinion, and the opinion of so many people that I see fucking nailing it out there, you should work very hard. You shouldn't try, you should work very hard at integrating the intuitive side of you, the analytical side of you, and the sensory, the taste side of you. I hope that helps. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.